Welcome to Higher Ed Athletics presented by Pylytics. Today's conversation is an interview I had with Lee DeLeon of Mid-Tennessee State Athletics. He is the Deputy Athletic Director and Chief Revenue Officer. Comes on here with a different perspective as a Deputy AD. He's also been an athletic director before from Abilene Christian earlier in his career. So this conversation is a lot about institutional fit. Lee talks about things that weren't necessarily a good fit and what was. The career mapping conversation is something to stick around for, and we definitely get into a faith journey too, and how he built AD for Christ and what he's working on now is kind of a ministry outside of just his traditional day job, as if he's not busy enough. He's going to be an AD again one day, and just really cannot thank Lee enough for coming on the podcast and talking about his own journey. And I think it's going to help a lot of people in this audience. And I just want to give a shout out once again to Pylytics. More money, less time, lower costs. So Pylytics is an AI tech company dedicated to solutions that generate revenue, save time, reduce costs for universities and sports and entertainment organizations. The reason we partnered with together is because of higher education aspect, and these systems, they can talk with your university side and your athletic side. Just give them a call. Go to pylytics.com and learn more about them. So thanks for watching this episode or listening to it, my conversation with Lee DeLeon.
Yeah, one thing I thought is really interesting with you is early in usually, this series is where I talk to deputy athletic directors. Well, you've already been an athletic director. We've seen sometimes recently where ADs leave for another AD job, but you kind of went another direction. Before we get to that part of your career as far as transitioning, I do want to just ask, like, what was it like being an athletic director at such a young age? You were the youngest one in D1, if I remember correctly, and you replaced Jared Mosley, who now he's at North Texas, but he had left, I think, for the Texas Sports Hall of Fame or something like
Correct.
that. And then for context, I think it was going through the D2 to D1 phase earlier.
Yep.
So what was it just like being such a young AD trying to learn things?
It was crazy and it was humbling and it was uh, incredibly exciting. Jared is an amazing athletic director, a wonderful man of God, just a guy that I really respect and look up to. And so he had big shoes to fill, literally and figuratively. Former ACU basketball player and Hall
Isn't
of
he like
Famer.
6'8" or something like
Yeah,
that?
6'8", just a total stud. So I was so excited and blessed just to get to be an AD in my home state of Texas and get to be at a faith-based institution like Abilene Christian and to get to help them transition from Division II to Division I. So honestly, Travis, every day was a blast, and I felt like it was an enormous amount of momentum and excitement within Abilene Christian University, and trying to capitalize on that momentum and excitement through fundraising and through building new facilities. We got to build a football stadium from the ground up, and that was a once in a lifetime opportunity that I'll forever cherish. And so I'll just tell you this: it was a lot coming at me at once, but it was also a blast, and I learned a tremendous amount. And I wouldn't change it for the world.
Before we get back to the show, I want to tell you about a new partnership I have with Onrise. So, for those that aren't aware, first 10 years of my career, I was actually a student athlete academic advisor. Mental health concerns and the betterment of student athletes has always been top of mind. So, finding a partner with the podcast where I don't really get to talk about that part of my life as much has been really helpful to kind of just showcase the great support that you can get. If you support student athletes, you know that mental health resources can be hard to implement, even harder to scale. Onrise provides complete mental health coverage, but built specifically for your athletes. With one call, programs can launch same-day access to peer support from retired athletes, licensed clinicians, and 24/7 crisis care. It costs less than hiring one full-time staff member, with no hiring hassles and no initiative fatigue for your department. To learn more, visit onrise.care. That's ONRISE.care.
Well, what was it like working at like a Christian university right out the gate? As someone that is pretty public with your faith, as we'll get to later. I mean, that had to been maybe it was a different time in your life of your faith journey. I'm not sure, but I
Sure.
just think that that'd be kind of cool too, right?
It was really rejuvenating, to be honest with you. I've been doing this for 21 years, and the 4 years that I was at Abilene Christian were the only time I've worked at a private Christian university. And so before that, I had been at University of Houston, Arizona, and New Mexico. So it was definitely different to be able to open a staff meeting in prayer and go to chapel with our student athletes and coaches and have an athletics chapel once a month. And so honestly, Travis, when I look back as to, why they hired me and why they gave me that chance when I was 33 years old, is I think it was in large part because I was comfortable being open with my faith and talking about it and trying to be a spiritual leader and a Christian example to our student athletes and coaches of what that looked like. And so that was really important to me. That's why I was so drawn to the job. And I think that's part of why they were so drawn to me. And I felt like I was, half pastor / half AD. I tried to pray out loud with somebody every day. That was just kind of a goal of mine, of somebody that I could say, hey, man, how can I pray for you? What can I do to help you? How can I serve you? And that was such a really cool part of my life, because at Abilene Christian, that's not only allowed, it's encouraged. I felt like they wanted me to be a spiritual leader, and that was an important part of my job. And so I took that role very seriously and tried to be as intentional as possible. And so that was a really revitalizing and reinvigorating part of my life and part of my career.
So, kind of thinking of sticking with the schools you've been at since and where you're at now. You've learned from a lot of athletic directors. You've been separated from that being an AD for a while now. But they were at that phase I mentioned of their transitioning, had just finished transitioning to D1, I believe. So how different do you feel like these D1 AD jobs are when you think about the role you had for 3.5, 4
Yeah.
years versus what your current AD has now, what like the ADs that you're connected with
Yep.
through like your mentoring, like they, let alone the transitions the last 5 years, but just like how different are the jobs? Because some people say, I want to be a D1 AD. Well, I would argue that if you don't have football or you're an FCS or you're a group of five or you're a power four, the job, some are similar, but I mean, just how different are they?
Very different now than when I was an AD, and I have so much respect for the current athletic directors and all that they have coming at them, and how much things are changing on a daily basis. And when I was the AD at Abilene Christian from 2014 to 2018, there was no NIL, there was no revenue share, and times were different. There was no transfer portal, and so a lot has changed. I think the role of an AD now is definitely high level. They're not in the weeds. They don't have time to be in the weeds. They have to focus on high level, university wide issues, industry wide issues, and so that's where I've really enjoyed my role as a deputy AD now at MTSU, to try to free up my boss to stay high level. So I'm in the weeds and I'm involved with everything, and I really enjoy that. And so I think the way that I led ACU is not too different from the way that I lead now, as the number 2 guy or deputy AD here at MTSU, along with Diane Turnham, our other deputy AD. We try our best to free up Chris Massaro, our boss, to stay high level and do the things that he needs to do. And so the jobs now, they're very political jobs. They're very public jobs. And you have to stay above the minutia so that you can be strategic and you can try to anticipate what's coming or try to navigate the changes as they happen. And so that a lot has changed. However, I'll say this, the same thing. The things that haven't changed are that a big part of being an AD is just being there, being present, being visible, showing up, going to games, going to practices, going to community events. That part has not changed. I still think, regardless of the level you're at, you could be in the SEC, or you could be FCS, you could be Division II, Division III. Your presence matters as an athletic director, and you have to show up. People notice when you're there, and they notice when you're not there. And so that's a big part of being an AD, and that part has not changed.
In some regards, so this is like the topic of my dissertation that I'm writing right now. So I'm reading a lot of the research and then actually listening back to a lot of my previous episodes and interviews of this question I've asked. But I've almost come to the conclusion on, in some ways, is the AD job now, or the deputy AD job now, more similar to what the AD job might have been,
Correct.
5 to 10 years ago.
Correct. I
Uh,
wholeheartedly agree with that statement.
which
Yep.
that prepares you well to be a really good deputy AD since you've been an AD before.
I love it. These jobs are a lot of fun. You're in the know. You're aware of what's going on, but you're not, getting dragged through the mud in the public if you make a bad decision or a bad hire. And so it's an interesting dynamic now. But I do love getting to be in the room with Chris as he's making decisions. He's a really thoughtful, wise, strategic, cerebral leader. And I've learned so much of just watching him process information and evaluate tough decisions and trying to learn as much from him as I could possibly learn. Um, and while he's thinking about those things and processing that information and making strategic decisions, Diane and I, the other deputy, we're doing our best to help run the department, keep it going smoothly. He's now on the college football playoff selection committee, so he's gone a lot, and so it's up to us to make sure things still run smoothly when he's not around. And to do that, we have to have a really good pulse on the department. And I think my time as an AD allows me to do that. I think that prepared me uniquely for this role, and hopefully, I've been able to add value to Chris while he's able to stay high level.
Well, kind of staying in that regard, talking about the deputy AD is, more like what the AD used to be, that role. But at the same time, like, I'm just curious how you've changed as an administrator. You've been a deputy, I think, at Middle Tennessee State. Really, I don't know if you're there during COVID as well. I can't remember,
I
but
was at Louisiana Lafayette during
okay.
COVID, and I was a deputy AD for development there, and then came here a little over 4 years ago to be the deputy AD for external. And
So
so,
you think about all these things. Like, I'd argue that COVID, we don't wish it on anyone, but as far as organizations go, you could make the argument that athletic directors were better prepared for the chaos that they're dealing with now because they dealt with the chaos of COVID and trying to figure that out. Think how many athletic directors and their teams. But I remember talking to ADs during COVID that they had never talked to their AD colleagues as much as they had during COVID, and then just thinking of an administrator, everything you all have gone through, like how have you kind of shifted with yourself as far as how you approach the job in the industry?
one thing that Chris Massaro says, and I love it, I'm going to steal it from him, is we get paid to hit the curveballs. Everybody can hit fastballs, but the leaders of the organization, they're the ones that have to be able to adjust and adapt and be able to hit the curve. And so, COVID definitely was a huge curveball to everybody, obviously. And I think now these other curveballs, from the House settlement to the latest, legislations, changes in legislation, there's always something. And so it really helps to be able to be to think on your feet, to adapt, to adjust, and to provide your staff with as much information as you can to keep them in the loop as best as possible, so that they can adjust with you. You've got to get the whole organization to be able to move and adapt quickly and nimbly, and that takes a lot of communication. And you've got to be able to stay current and know what's going on, and be able to communicate that down to your team, so that everybody feels like they're in the boat with you as you're trying to turn it around or to pivot. And so, yeah, COVID helped for sure, but I don't think anything really could fully prepare us for all the changes that have happened in the last couple of years.
But I feel like at least if anything, it kind of got this design thinking and this ability to change the model that now it's almost like a nonstop thing that they've gotten used to.
Let me ask you, what do Clemson, Charlotte, Coastal Carolina, and Boise State have in common? These athletic departments decided to use data with context, turning that data into action in hiring coaches, writing contracts, and doing long-term planning. They did this by partnering with AD Vantage. After 10 plus years as a D1 college coach, Founder and CEO Tanner Stump saw a gap. Athletic administrators didn't have the tools to find not just the best coach, but the right coach for their program at their institution at that time. Most industry solutions he did see were expensive, outdated, or lacked sport-specific insights. So he decided to build AD Vantage from the ground up, bootstrapped, customer first, and focused on the future of college athletics. Before we joined forces, Tanner let me get my own username and look under the hood as an AD looking to hire some coaches. And I can truly say this is a company and product that athletic directors and sport administrators need. Visit athleticdirectorvantage.com to get a demo. Tell them Travis from Higher Ed Athletics sent you, and ask them about the rating score they created called Coach Effect.
So I want to switch gears a little bit to this career mapping. This is a big part of the Deputy AD series. And some of the future ones on. Will had also been an AD before, but that's why I kind of wanted to transition in that regard. But what is your decision-making process to decide on going certain places or pursuing certain jobs throughout your career? And that includes staying at Middle Tennessee State right now.
Yep.
I'm sure there's prayer involved too, but just maybe share about throughout your stops that you've had that you mentioned, just how you kind of career map.
Yeah. So my wife Lacey and I have been married for almost 19 years, and man, she's my rock, and she's a wonderful woman of God that I really rely on for decisions and for input. So the first thing I do when a job comes open is I'll go to her and I'll just be like, "Hey, what do you think? Does this excite you at all?" I'm kind of more of a I love everyone, love every place. I could kind of adjust and adapt, and so she's a Southern girl from Dallas, Texas, and doesn't like cold weather a ton, and so she's kind of able to help us with fit. I think fit matters so much, and so when I come to her with ideas or possibilities, she's really good about like, I don't know if we would fit in there. I don't know if that makes sense for us. I don't know if that's where we want to raise our kids, and so that's the first thing I do. I also have really great friends and mentors. I talked to Ian McCall this morning. Ian has been my, go-to mentor since I was probably 24, 25 years old. And he is so wise and so humble and always gives great feedback. And then I have really good friends, guys that are in the business that are, been through what I've been through, that have made moves, like Tyler Mariucci at Fresno State and Jared Binko at Auburn. I have a lot of friends. I can't name them all. Kevin Gall at Baylor. A lot of guys that I'll call and I'll just say, "Hey man, is this would this make sense? Could you see me being happy there? Is that a good spot for my family and me?" And then I'll go to the Lord in prayer and just kind of try to shut up. Prayer way too often is a one-way street. Sometimes we have to just listen and try to be quiet and be still. And allow God to speak to our hearts and our minds and reveal his will to us. And so I try to do a good job of that. Sometimes that's really difficult with all the noise going on. But so I've made 6 moves. This is my 7th stop. And I think I was a great fit at probably all of but one. We left Abilene Christian and went to Purdue. And it was a great opportunity to go to a big time school at a big time conference and a good brand. And so we drive from West Texas, Abilene, all the way to West Lafayette, Indiana. And we get there that first night. And my son, Landon, who's now 14, but at the time was probably 7. And we're at our first restaurant in Indiana. And the waitress comes over. She's real sweet. She says, "Young man, what would you like to drink?" And he said, "I'll take a Dr. Pepper." And she said, we don't have Dr. Pepper. He goes, "I'll take sweet tea." She said, "We don't have sweet tea." And my little 7-year-old son, Landon, looks at me and goes, "Dad, where did you move us?" And I've always thought that was hilarious because I probably should have known at that point, you know what, if you don't have sweet tea and Dr. Pepper, probably not right for the De Leon household. But no, we were there for a year and it was not the best fit. We're not really Midwest people. We're not great in cold weather with a lot of snow. And so that one didn't work out. We were only there for a year and ended up moving back to Louisiana, Lafayette, which was close to home. I'm from Houston. My wife's from Dallas. But yeah, fit really, really matters. And I couldn't emphasize that enough. Hopefully that story provides some comedic relief to the conversation.
Well, this is in Indiana. Those degrees behind the wall and pretty much like 10 different things in this office that are off camera are IU related. Although I will say, somebody asked me, are you still going to talk about IU on the podcast? Because I don't think I've shared on podcast much, but I was laid off by IU like
Mm.
6 months ago. Not from athletics, but I was working in university administration. But it was kind of a blessing because about maybe 3 weeks before that, I wrote down on a piece of paper in my prayer journal and just started thinking about like what I wanted out of mostly fatherhood. But we were kind of planning the summer, and I realized that the previous summer I had hardly spent any time with my kids. They
Mm.
basically had to be in camp all, and I was getting home at 6:30, and then with commute and everything, and we switched towns. Yeah, I don't know how all you athletic directors and deputies move all over the place. I was so nervous to move our family one town over back to my
Oh,
hometown.
wow. Wow.
But so we move. Now all of a sudden, kids get out of school an hour and a half earlier than the old town. So I had written down that I'd like to be able to spend more time with my kids, see my kids more, and have a way to build higher at athletics. And so I wrote that down, but I didn't think that that would also lead to a layoff. So now now I get to do higher ed athletics full time, and I'm with my kids all the time, so that's a
Good for
blessing in
you.
disguise. But yeah, I think fit is something that I went back earlier in the conversation. I said I think a lot of people. I see this in academic research is they kind of I want to be a D1 athletic director. Okay, well, like where?
Hmm.
And you don't want to. I don't know if some search firms do this, but I think sometimes that they might not see institutional fit as good. They see, oh, you're a revenue generator, or something like that. That's what they need. Well, in reality, like you just said, it's got to be a fit. And yeah, and so you can take shots at Purdue for it not being a fit. I'm
No,
totally okay
man.
with that.
Purdue's a great place with great people, and Indiana's a great place with great people. It just wasn't the best fit for us, and you need to have discipline. A lot of people say, "Oh man, I I'm going to be an AD, and my path is going to be like this," and what I learned very quickly is that it's not always linear, and sometimes there's going to be some ups and some downs and some U-turns, if you will, right? And that was that's been a hard lesson I've had to learn, and going to Purdue taught me so much, even though it didn't work out and it wasn't the best. I wasn't the best fit for them, and they weren't the best fit for me. It taught me so much about myself and what I needed to do, what I needed to. It really refined my focus on who I was and where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And so sometimes we have to get knocked down. We have to make mistakes. We have to fail. We have to fall on our face a little bit. To be humbled and to be reminded that, man, sometimes we're not that smart, and we gotta lean on other people and other things, or your faith or whatever. But secondly, just to realize, like, man, not everything is going to be a win. Sometimes you're going to have to lose, and sometimes there's more lessons and losses than there are in wins. And when I went to Purdue and things didn't work out there, like I grew so much from that experience. I was mad at first, I was bitter at first, and then looking back, it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And so, um, these paths are not always linear. Sometimes you have to make mistakes and learn from them. I honestly needed to be humbled. I think early on in my career, I was really blessed to have a lot of success at a young age, but I probably got that AD job before I was ready, and I learned a lot from that time at ACU and that time at Purdue, because I probably got into some jobs and some situations that I wasn't quite ready for. I got an AD job before I had ever been a sports supervisor. And man, that was a mistake. If anybody out there is trying to get AD jobs, like, you don't want to get one before you're ready. Don't be too
It's hard to
impatient.
get a second one if you don't do good the
That's
first
right.
time, though.
You're exactly right. And so, patience is a virtue, and that's not my biggest strength. I'm a very ambitious, impatient kind of guy, and I'm working on that still to this day. Every day I work on that. But there's a lot that you can learn in the valleys, a lot that you can learn from your mistakes that will refine you and make you better for the next one.
Well, and I'll end the Purdue talk by saying I've been going to Purdue. Inadvertently became a Purdue season ticket holder. Through my in-law, I married into Purdue season ticket holder, so I've gone to probably 50 men's basketball and football games in the last like 5 to 10 years. I was actually supposed to go tonight, of when we're recording, but I'm actually doing a trip to Michigan State University to see my twin brother and meet with the athletic administration and do some higher athletic stuff. But I also will say Mike Babinski is the first AD that didn't want to be on a podcast, but he's like, come to my office and you can ask me anything. And we met for over an hour early on in higher ed athletics when I was trying to prep for like what I wanted to study my dissertation on, and he would answer anything. And
Well,
so the
I'll give you a
private
quick. Yeah, I'll give you a quick Mike
go for
Babinski
it.
story. Mike and I both went to Notre Dame, and he's a brilliant man and a great leader. And he taught me a really valuable lesson I'll never forget. So I left ACU to go to Purdue, and I had a little bit of regret of leaving an AD job to go to Purdue, and I was kind of asking him about like, well, hey, can I learn from you still? Can we meet regularly? Can you mentor me? And he did that. And one of the things he taught me that I'll never forget was ADs are like the directors of a movie. They're not on the screen. They're not the stars of the show. The coaches are like the actors. They're the stars. They're the ones that everybody sees. The ADs are behind the scenes, off the screen, and but everyone knows who's in charge. Everyone knows that the director is calling the shots, that the AD is calling the shots, but you don't have to always be at the forefront. And that really, I needed to hear that, because when I was at Abilene Christian, I was more comfortable in the spotlight than I was behind the scenes, because I'm better speaking to a Rotary Club or a Chamber of Commerce or a group of alumni than I am looking at spreadsheets. And I thought, okay, well, that's part of what being an AD is, being out there and being out front. But then I realized, you know what, I was shining the spotlight on myself way too much, because it's not about me. And Mike really reinforced that athletic directors are like the directors of a movie, and that coaches are the real stars on the big screen. So that was a really great lesson, and I'm thankful to Mike for teaching me that.
Yeah, he basically said that same comment when he met with me, and it stuck with me. And that's why he turned down the interview. He's like, I have nothing against that, but I don't need to. I don't care if I end up in the ticker, or and yeah. So it was a good lesson. I can imagine learning from him. So even in a short time you're somewhere, you can still learn something that you're going to take with you the rest of
Absolutely.
your career, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, well, just kind of we'll round out soon, but I am kind of curious. Like, what are things that you're working on now? And you talked about how your AD is now on the CFP, so you and your other deputy get to take on more responsibilities. You've obviously reflected on being an AD. You reflected on on institutional fit being an importance. Assuming that you want to be an athletic director again at some point, what are you working on to try and get better as you see the changes to college athletics? Like, what are you trying to improve on?
I want to listen well. I want to really be more thoughtful and calculated, to move a little bit slower and not be as reactionary. I think some of the best leaders are the most thoughtful, because they're very prepared when they do act. They're very prepared to act, and kind of the whole measure twice, cut once mentality of just being really calculated and thorough in your preparation, very thoughtful in your approach, so that when it is time to act, you know exactly what you're doing. I was a little bit more shoot from the hip, but that was part of being a young idiot, being a 33-year-old athletic director. So if I ever get the opportunity to go back to the chair, I'm going to be much more calculated, much more thoughtful. The other thing I'll say is I don't think I really knew how to serve coaches well. Again, I had not been a sports supervisor. Now I have 5 sports here at MTSU, and I'm really trying to learn how coaches think, how they work, how they operate. They're a different breed, and I was not a coach. I was not even a student athlete. I'm a fan. I got into college athletics because I'm a fan, and I love going to college sporting events and being a part of the crowd and the passion and the pageantry behind all that.
Being a student at Notre Dame, I'm sure reinforced
It
that
did. That's where
fanhood.
it all started, man. That's where it all started. And so I've really had to like almost study coaches to really understand how they're wired, and what drives them, and how they like to be treated. And so that's something else that I'm working on every day, is trying to like learn how coaches think and how can I better serve them? How can I better help them? Again, they're the stars of the show. One other thing that I'll end with here, Travis, I have this note on my computer. You can't see it here. It's taped next to my keyboard. It says INAM. It's not about me. And I got that from the first line of the second most popular book in the history of mankind, The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. I read it in college for the first time. I've read it 3 or 4 times since then. But the first line of The Purpose-Driven Life is, it's not about you. We're on this earth for other people, and stop trying to make things about yourself. I developed a mission statement back in 2012 at the NCAA Leadership Institute, which is an amazing program. And it's to make an impact for Jesus Christ through college athletics. And if I want to make an impact, well, then I better be about other people. And I better pour into other people, love on other people, encourage other people, make things about them. On this, we're put on this earth to live for other people, not for ourselves. And to do that, we have to really invest in them and pour into them and look for opportunities to help them and encourage them, because we're not designed to go through life by ourselves. We're not designed to be independent from other people. We're designed to be dependent and to encourage one another and help each other. So that's another thing that I learned the hard way. I think in my career early on, I did make it about myself too much, and I'm trying really hard moving forward to never make that same mistake again.
Well, that's a good segue, and I think that number 2 best book is probably pulling a lot from the number 1 best book.
That's
But
right. Amen.
I admittedly do not. I wanted to make an emphasis. This past series of the podcast was about I need to probably be more out there with my faith too, because I am a man of faith, and I feel like it's everywhere except for probably on my podcast. And so I wanted to kind of end it talking about kingdom coaching and
Yeah.
ADs for Christ. But before I ask you, I'll also push this book that I'm reading now
Oh,
called
cool.
Heaven by Randy Alcorn, because I'm really just fascinated by what heaven will be like, and you can get a lot from it. And so I am just started reading that, and I'm excited
Heaven by
about
Randy Alcorn.
yep,
Okay,
Heaven by
cool.
Randy Alcorn is given to me by a friend of mine who's kind of like my Bible. Like we had to reschedule because I forgot about a Bible study, and it was with him, and he gave me this book. And so I want to hear about. I heard about ADs for Christ a few years ago, and if you guys ever need a moderator for anything, I will get there, and I would love to
Cool.
do it.
Very cool.
Because I think it's very important. But maybe just talk about ADs for Christ, and then tell me what you're doing as well with Kingdom Coaching.
Well, thanks for asking. It's my passion. In 2017, when I was at ACU and I had no idea what I was doing, I heard Jay Jacobs speak at an event, and I just went up to him afterwards. He was the AD at Auburn at the time, and I was like, "Man, I want to learn from you. Can you be my mentor?" And he was like, "Well, what does that mean?" I said, "I don't know. Like, can we hop on a call once a month?" And he was like, "Sure." So we started talking once a month. And man, he helped me so much. What does it look like to be a man of God and to be a leader as a Christian, to be an athletic director as a Christian? How do you hire and fire in a godly way? How do you handle difficult circumstances in a godly way? And after about a year of doing that, he said, "Hey, Lee, we should do more of this. How can we do this with more people?" And I said, "Man, my friend Tommy McClellan and I have been talking about this forever." Tommy was the AD at La Tech at the time. And I said, "Jay, if you just promise me you'll show up, I'll put on an event in Dallas. I'll do all the work. You just show up, and we'll get together, and it'll be kind of like a fellowship of Christian athletes for ADs and aspiring ADs." And that first event in July of 2017, we met in Dallas. Jay spoke, Tommy spoke, but listen to who else was there. It's amazing. Jared Mosley, Jeremiah Dickey, Connor Smith, who's now Jared's number 2 at North Texas, Jamie Boggs, Marcus Sudbury at Wisconsin, Eric Wood. The list goes on. I think Brad Hardikoff. There was an amazing group of people. I can't think of all 20. Brent Jones was there, now at Georgia Tech. Ryan Peck, been involved from the beginning. By the way, you did a great job with Ryan. He's the best. I love that guy, and I enjoyed y'all's podcast. But we met that summer, and there was 20 of us. And then the following year, we met again in Dallas, and there was 30 of us. And then the following year, we moved to Nashville, and there was now like 80 of us, and it was really starting to pick up some steam. We developed a board of directors. We created bylaws. We started getting sponsorships, and it just grew and grew and grew. And now today, there's over 600 people in the database for ADs for Christ. They have the 10th annual event is coming up this summer at Samford University. About 3 years ago, I passed the torch to Connor Smith, who was at Dallas Baptist and now is at North Texas. And so Connor and Jay and Tommy and others are still leading that organization, doing an amazing job. And hopefully that has been a blessing to our industry, because it was intended to just be a safe place for people to fellowship and encourage one another. And iron sharpens iron is one of the themes from Proverbs 27:17. And so hopefully that has been a blessing. When I stepped down from the presidency of ADs for Christ, I took about 3-4 months off, but I still had this ministry itch of what can I do. And so I started working with a guy named Travis Wyckoff, who owns and runs Kingdom Coaching. And I went to Travis. I said, man, I love helping people find jobs and move up and advance their careers. It's just a huge passion of mine. And I'm throwing that out there to anybody who's interested. If I can help anybody with their career and the next steps, please reach out. But what we started doing was like, hey, why don't we put people through like an interview prep course? And we do 4 Zoom calls, and we help them with self-awareness, strengths and weaknesses, some sticky language and verbiage to help them convey in a compelling and memorable fashion who they are in the interview. Then we actually do interview prep, do's and don'ts, tips and pointers. And then we end with an actual mock interview, and we time you, and we give you real-time feedback on your answers. And hey, I wouldn't say this, or hey, I'd switch the order up here, or emphasize this. Tell stories. Stories are memorable. Make sure you don't forget that, and really try to help people. And so that's become a huge blessing in my life. We've worked with over 35 people, from head coaches to athletic directors to deputy ADs to SWAs, and that's been super fulfilling. And then some Christian colleges started calling and being like, hey, you started ADs for Christ. What Christians should we talk to about this job? And I started saying, well, why don't you hire Kingdom Coaching and let us do the search for you? And so we've now done 10 executive searches at Christian universities across the country. And man, that's been a blessing as well. And so we've worked with Liberty and Pepperdine and Valparaiso and Oral Roberts. And it's just been so much fun. So God is moving in our industry. If you ever feel alone or isolated, you're not. Be encouraged that there's people that would love to help you, and consider me one of them. Please reach out, lee.deleon@mtsu.edu, and I'd be happy to help any way that I can.
Well, Lee, thanks for taking the time, join me on Hired Athletics, and share some wisdom with people. And I'd say you're doing pretty good with that mission.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. This has been a blessing and an honor to get to spend time with you, Travis. I hope you have a great day.